Alright, so today we're talking about study tips on how to pass the ACE personal trainer exam. So for my regular viewers, unless you have aspirations of becoming an ACE certified personal trainer, this video is going to be useless to you. If you're new to the channel, which is probably most of you, welcome. I'm glad to have you. I'll save you the self-promoting intro and get on with this, because if you're like me when you're studying for this exam, you could care less about the person's channel. You're just flying through as many YouTube videos as possible on how to pass the exam. You might even have the speed cranked up to 1.5 like I did, so you can get through even more videos even faster, right? I feel ya. Let's get started. Okay, so first of all, buy the book. The book, if you haven't seen it already, it looks like this. And I don't care how smart you are, how much knowledge of this stuff you already have, what your GPA was, or any of that stuff. Buy the book. You will. I guess it's possible to get past the test without it, but it's very unlikely because you have to know how ACE likes things worded. Okay, they are really big on their ACE IFT model. And when it comes to exam time, they will give you, it's multiple choice, but they give you like 4 correct answers, and you have to choose the best answer, which is a pain in the butt because you have 150 questions, and you'll run out of time evaluating every single one. So you have to know the answer, and you have to know how they want things worded. The second thing is that I bought like the biggest pack, so like it came with Essentials of Exercise Science for Fitness Professionals, which is this. Now, I know there's a lot of some people like this, some people don't. Some people say it's a waste of time. If you have a pretty solid knowledge of exercise science, or maybe you went to school and majored in kinesiology or something like that, then you probably don't need this. But if you're like me when you first started this and you have no like base knowledge or no fundamentals, nothing to go off of, this is really good. I highly recommend this. You aren't going. It can be a little intimidating when you're looking through it because there's some really technical stuff in here, but ACE teaches you how to use this. I'll get into that in just a little bit. But yeah, so if you don't have any knowledge, any prior knowledge of exercise science, this is a good resource to have. If you feel pretty confident in your exercise science knowledge, don't worry about it. The third is the study companion, which looks like this guy. And I like this as well because it has a quick summary of every chapter, and then there's a short little quiz that goes along with that. These practice questions or quiz questions are not reflective of the exam, but they highlight the points that you need to study. So if you do, that's kind of where this came into play for me as I was going through this, is that when I would finish one chapter, I would take the quiz, and then I would, mark like which ones I got wrong so that I knew which sections of the chapter I need to go back and study. And the cool thing about this is that it even tells you exactly where, exactly, there's like an answer sheet at the end, and it tells you exactly where to find the answer. So like right there in the answer key, it tells you, it gives you the exact page on where to find this stuff. So this was a good resource. When I finished each chapter, I always went through, read the summary, and then did the quizzes. Okay, next up. Okay, yes, so other study materials. There are a ton of study materials out there, especially like outside of ACE. There are companies that sell like practice tests and a number of other resources, which I don't recommend doing that because ACE doesn't, back those people. Those people are outside companies trying to make money, and there's no guarantee that their study material is going to have anything to do with, or it might be like real knowledge, but you may not need to know it for the exam. So don't overwhelm yourself. Don't buy a whole bunch of study materials. That's one of the reasons why I went with ACE in the first place. Aside from being a highly accredited organization, is that they provide you with a lot of study tools, which I'll talk about here in a second, to help you with this exam. So don't go crazy on buying exam study materials. ACE does an excellent job of guiding you through this program and telling you exactly what you need to study. ACE has I forget what they call it, like a 1-800 number you can call. And they make it pretty obvious once you buy the package. You'll find it, like their resource center, I think is what they call it. And it's a 1-800 number you call. It's toll free, obviously. It's a 1-800 number, and you get a live person. You'll probably get an answering machine, but they will call you, a live person will call you back. When you leave a message, whatever question is you have, make sure you ask it as detailed as possible, because like, there was one time I remember they called me back and I wasn't able to answer, and they left me a very detailed message explaining the question. I didn't even have to call them back. Like, the guy did such a good job of explaining it to me. So that is an excellent resource. You get a live person. Don't think that because you get the answering machine they're never going to call you back. They do call you back. I used them a couple of times, and I think both times they called me back within 24 hours. So that's an excellent resource. If you're totally stumped and have no idea what to do, give those guys a call. They will call you back. You don't need to know like every single bone, muscle, ligament, things like that. But you do need to know like where to find, or like, if they reference it in a question, you need to know what they're talking about. Planes of motion. Okay, so, frontal, sagittal, transverse, make sure you know those planes of motion. So, like, if they are talking about a lunge, you have to know what plane of motion a lunge takes place in. Or they might tell you, you get the idea. So, know the planes of motion, that's a big one. Also, Chapter 7. Chapter 7 is huge. Cannot emphasize this enough. This is where they're talking about, postural deviations, lordosis, kyphosis, those type of things. And they really harp on this because it's a safety thing with your clients. It's making sure your clients have good posture when they're performing things. There are a lot of questions on the exam about Chapter 7. I promise you will have multiple questions about Chapter 7. Make sure you know that. That is a huge part of the exam. Know Chapter 7. On the other side, if there's one thing you don't need to study, I would say don't study the yoga section. I don't think I had one practice question about yoga or Tai Chi, and I know I didn't have any on the actual exam about it. So I would say, like, after you pass the exam, go back and like look at it, because that is a growing part of the fitness industry, and you will need to at least have some fundamental idea of what they're talking about. But for the purpose of the exam, don't worry about it. Note cards. I know a lot of people like really big on note cards, but I did not. I probably had like 10 note cards of the various definitions, that I used. But other than that, I didn't find it very useful. What I did use my note cards for was concepts that I was having a hard time grasping. So, like hip flexors versus hip extensors, for example, was one that I was really having a hard time with. So what I did was I wrote down the muscles on a little flashcard here, and then I drew a little two-dimensional diagram of what they look like. And now I know I could just go Google Images and type this up, but to me there was something about putting pen to paper and physically drawing this out and labeling it that really kind of made this stick for me. So if that works for you, give it a try. If not, discard it, find something else that works for you. Google and YouTube are awesome resources. I Googled things, I YouTubed things all the time, especially when you're talking about like postural deviations and you need like a 3D moving image of something. Like, YouTube was awesome for that. Google Images was great when you're trying to look at like a specific image, because they do a decent job in the textbook of telling you like of showing you pictures, but sometimes it's not clear enough, especially when you've got muscles over top of other muscles or ligaments tangled in there and that sort of thing. It's hard to tell exactly what's going on. So there's also like different 3D models you can mount. So just Google, like whatever muscle group it is you find, and scroll down far enough, and eventually you'll find like these 3D models that people post on there. Great resource. I use that quite a bit too. What else we got here? Kind of going off of that is like focus on knowing the function of the muscle groups. So as you're going through and learning the muscles, make sure you know kind of like what its job is. Like contract, extend, flex, those type of things, and that will help you when it comes to test time, because if you know the function and the movement and what things are supposed to do, you can, that's what's going to help you pass this exam, is applying the knowledge to a situation. The practice exams. Okay, so at the end of each chapter there are quizzes. Those are very good, but they are not reflective of the exam. Use the quizzes to guide your studying. Okay, use that kind of like I was talking about with the study companion. Use those quizzes, and you can even print them off too, which is pretty cool. Use those quizzes to help you guide your study and figure out what you need to focus on. When it comes time to the practice exam, those are reflective of the exam. I thought they were very similar, so keep that in mind. If you miss a question on the practice exam or the quizzes, I think I mentioned this already, but it will tell you exactly where in the book to find it. So that applies for the quizzes at the end of each chapter as well as the final practice exams. If you fail, so you'll get 2 practice exams, right? I took the first one about a month before my exam, and I failed it. Don't freak out if you fail it the first time through. I failed it by like 5 or 6 questions, I think. So what I recommend is taking the next week or 2 to really thoroughly go through that first practice exam, figure out what your weak points are, and then I took the second practice test about 2 weeks before my exam, and I passed it. And at that point, my confidence was really high. I was feeling really good, and then I had 2 weeks to go back with a fine-tooth comb and go over anything that I felt like I needed to review. The last thing I want to mention is the actual test, when you're signing up for your test, think about what time of day is going to be best for you. Okay, I know that's like kind of a no-brainer, but I know there's so many things you're thinking about when you're studying that sometimes it's easy to overlook that. When I signed up, I had multiple time slots available. There was like a 9 a.m., 2 p.m., and then some other random time. So I chose 9 a.m. because the earlier the better for me. The further, later in the day, my mental capacity starts to trickle off. So when you're signing up for the exam, pick the time slot that makes the most sense for you. If you are a morning person like me and you think and you process things best in the morning, I did not study at all the morning of, and I think that was hugely beneficial for me going into the exam. It's a 3-hour exam, I used all 3 hours because why not, My theory was that, I didn't want to use up any brain power and, kind of like pre-exhaust myself before going into the exam. So I made sure I got a good night's sleep the night before. I ate, a healthy breakfast the morning of, something that wasn't too heavy, something that was going to fuel me and give me the brain power that I needed to get through the exam. And guys, this, it's a lot. It's a lot. This is a lot to do. I know it's a lot to study, but it is very doable. Use the ACE Academy Elite. It outlines everything you need to know. It doesn't always go in order, so it skips chapters, but it comes full circle, and at the end, it totally makes sense, and it's, in my opinion, the best way to study. That's how I did it. I followed it to a T. It is awesome. Use ACE Academy Elite as your study guide. It coaches you the whole way through, and it kind of gives you this peace of mind that, okay, here's the timeline. I can do this. Everything's going to be okay. All right. Guys, I wish you the best of luck. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. I'll do my best to help you out. Best of luck to you. And yeah, you're going to put in the work. This is absolutely a doable test, but it's hard and you have to work at it. So thanks. I'll see you guys next time.